The joke that sparked fire. Daniel had never been good with silence, and that flaw of his had often pushed him into trouble. But this time it carried him into something he could not have imagined. He was standing on the edge of a crystalline canyon lit by the twin suns of the planet Lysera when she appeared. She moved like liquid light, tall and graceful, with eyes that shimmered like burning sapphires and a long, shimmering appendage trailing behind her body that looked almost like a tail made of living flame. Daniel had come as part of a survey team, though at that moment he was alone, his equipment pack resting at his feet while he stared in disbelief at the figure before him. His mind scrambled for words, and instead of caution he fell back on humor, the same clumsy defense he had always used when nervous. With a lopsided grin he blurted out, "Nice tail." The words echoed strangely in the canyon, carried on the wind. For a heartbeat he thought she had not understood him. Then everything changed. Her body flared into blue fire that roared upward like a torch against the sky. Heat pressed against his skin and Daniel stumbled back, shielding his face. He thought he had triggered her rage, thought that his careless words had signed his death sentence. Yet even through the waves of heat he saw her eyes widen not in anger, but in something closer to shock. The fire that burned across her body licked at the rocks but did not spread, and she held herself perfectly still as though fighting for control. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears and every survival instinct screamed at him to run, but something rooted him to the spot. His fear mixed with awe because beneath that fire she was not monstrous. She was extraordinary. The flames framed her silhouette like a living crown, and her gaze locked onto him with intensity. He felt as though she was searching his soul for something only she could see. When she finally spoke, her voice was music carried on the crackle of flame. "You should not have said that. Humor is dangerous here." The words were accented, shaped carefully, but they carried weight. Daniel swallowed hard, trying to steady his voice. "It was just a joke. I didn't mean to insult you." The fire softened but did not vanish. Her long tail of energy flicked like a whip of light. She tilted her head, studying him with suspicion and something else that he could not name. "You are human," she said slowly. "Your kind is known for arrogance, but also for strange courage." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine, though the heat still pressed around him. "Yeah, guilty as charged," he muttered. But he kept his eyes on her, not daring to look away. Silence stretched again, but this time it felt different. Her flames pulsed in rhythm with her breath, and after a long pause she whispered, "I could have burned you to ash for those words, yet I did not." He nodded carefully. "And I'm grateful for that. Maybe you didn't because deep down you knew I wasn't mocking you." Her expression flickered, and for the briefest moment he saw vulnerability in her fiery gaze. Then she stepped closer, and Daniel felt his heartbeat quicken. The heat was almost unbearable, but he forced himself to stand firm. She stopped just a few feet away, her fire curling like smoke in the air. "I am Kaylira," she said. "My people are cursed with fire that follows our emotions. No one approaches us without fear. And yet you joked." Daniel almost laughed at the absurdity of it all. "That's what humans do when we're scared. We make jokes, sometimes stupid ones." Kaylira's flames flickered again, less violently this time, as if her emotions had shifted. "Strange human," she murmured. "Your words lit a fire in me that I cannot easily control. Be careful, for you may not survive the next spark." He met her warning with a steady gaze, surprised at his own courage. "Then maybe you'll just have to teach me how not to spark it." For the first time she smiled, a faint curve of her lips beneath the glow of blue fire, and Daniel realized that he had crossed a threshold he could never turn back from. In the space of a careless joke, something had begun between them, something fragile and dangerous and full of possibility. The canyon around them pulsed with light as the suns dipped lower, painting her flames in shades of violet and gold. Daniel knew one thing with absolute certainty. His life had just changed forever. The Woman of Fire. The night came quickly on Lysera as the twin suns slipped beneath the jagged horizon and the canyon grew darker. Daniel remained where he stood, unable to tear his eyes away from Kaylira, whose body still shimmered with that faint blue fire. The heat was less fierce now and he could breathe again, but the memory of that first burst of flame still clung to his skin. He tried to think of what to say next, yet words seemed too small for the moment. Kaylira herself finally broke the silence. "My people," she said with a voice softer than before, "were born from storms. We are energy given form. Our fire is both our gift and our curse. When we feel joy or anger or fear, the flames rise. Most civilizations call us dangerous because we cannot always hold it back. Her eyes flickered like twin stars as she spoke, and Daniel felt the weight of her confession. He wanted to answer carefully this time, but his natural honesty won out. "So you live in fear of yourself," he said, "and everyone else fears you because of it." Kalira gave a small nod, the flames around her tail curling in restless patterns. "We are called Volari by the Council. They use us when they need power or weapons, but they never allow us freedom. Our emotions make us unstable. We are seen as tools, not people." The bitterness in her words struck Daniel in the chest. He had heard stories of the Council treating certain species with cruelty, but never with this much clarity. He realized she was not just a strange being of fire. She was a prisoner of her own nature and of the galaxy's fear. That thought made him forget his nerves. He stepped closer despite the heat, close enough to see the flicker of flame along her arms like rivers of light beneath her skin. "You don't deserve that," he said with conviction. "You deserve to be more than a weapon. You deserve to laugh and live and choose what to be." His words seemed to shake her. Kalira blinked as if she had not expected anyone to speak to her like that. "You say this as if it is simple," she whispered. "But what do humans know of our fire? One wrong word, one wrong touch, and I could burn you away." Daniel shrugged, though his heart still pounded. "Maybe, but I've lived with fire before. Humans have burned themselves countless times trying to tame it, but we always find ways to use it for warmth and light. Maybe you're the same. Maybe your fire just needs someone who doesn't run from it." For a long moment she only stared at him, the canyon echoing with the faint hum of her energy. Then she said something that changed the air between them. "When you joked, something happened. The fire rose, but it did not lash out. It did not destroy. Instead, it filled me with a warmth I have never felt before. I do not understand it." Daniel's throat tightened. He had meant nothing by his words at first, only clumsy humor. But somehow they had touched her. "Maybe it means you're not just fire," he said gently. "Maybe it means you're capable of something more." She stepped nearer, and though heat surged, Daniel forced himself not to flinch. Her presence was overwhelming, every breath like standing beside a living star. But her eyes held a softness now. "Human," she said, "you speak as though you see me. No council guard has ever spoken so. No ally has dared." He smiled faintly, sweat dripping down his forehead. "Name's Daniel, not human, and yeah, I see you. You're Kalira. That matters more than your fire." Something like a laugh escaped her then, fragile and uncertain, and the flames around her dimmed to a gentle glow. It was the first time he had seen her laugh, and it stirred something deep in his chest. She was beautiful, not just in the way her body shimmered with light, but in the way her spirit fought against chains no one else could see. The night air grew colder as the suns vanished fully and the stars appeared above them. Daniel dropped to sit on a rock, trying to catch his breath. Kalira remained standing, the glow of her fire painting the canyon walls in soft light. "I should not linger," she said quietly. "If the council senses my flame here, they will come. They always come. They fear I might bond with others." "Bond?" Daniel asked, his curiosity overcoming his caution. She hesitated, but then answered. "Our fire connects when we trust. It can link our hearts to another being. That bond is dangerous, for it makes us stable yet uncontrollable by the council. They forbid it. They call it forbidden love." Daniel listened, the truth sinking deep into him. This woman of fire, feared and hunted, longed for a bond that was outlawed. He thought of her smile, small but real, and his chest ached. "Then maybe they're afraid of the wrong thing," he murmured. "Maybe the bond is what makes you whole." Kalira looked at him with eyes that burned like dawn. She did not answer, but in her silence he felt something growing between them, fragile as glass yet fierce as flame. The stars above bore witness as their story truly began, shadows of the galaxy. The following days on Lysera were unlike anything Daniel had imagined when he first accepted the assignment. His team thought he was surveying mineral veins in the crystal canyons, and technically he still collected data, but his true focus had shifted. Each night after the suns dipped beyond the ridges, Kalira appeared like a secret flame moving through the shadows. At first she kept her distance, but with every meeting she drew closer, her fire softer, her voice less guarded. Daniel found himself waiting for her glow in the dark, more than he cared about the council's survey quotas. Kalira spoke to him of her people, the Volari, who lived hidden in places where the council rarely ventured. They were watched, restricted, and forced to use their energy only when called upon. She described how the council feared their bond ability most of all, for it meant they could choose loyalty outside of council command. Daniel listened and grew angry, his jaw tightening as he thought of her kind being treated as weapons. Humanity had not always been innocent either, but he believed in freedom, in the right to love and live without chains, and Kalira deserved that right more than anyone. One evening he asked her why she continued to come to him when doing so put her at risk. She hesitated before answering, and when she did, her flames dimmed until they were barely embers against the night. "Because when you speak," she said slowly, "the fire inside me does not rage out of control. It listens. No one has ever quieted it before. You are dangerous to me, Daniel, because you make me hope." Her confession struck him harder than any blow. Hope was a fragile thing in the galaxy, but if he could give it to her, then he would not turn away. He reached out his hand, though the heat stung his skin, and for a brief moment her fiery fingers brushed against his palm. The pain was sharp yet bearable, and behind it was a warmth that spread through him, filling his chest with something powerful. They pulled back quickly, both startled, but neither regretted the contact. The bond between them was growing, and that was when the shadows of the galaxy began to take notice. The council had agents everywhere, watchers trained to sense unusual energy patterns. Kalira's presence on Lysera had already been recorded, and whispers began to spread that a Volari had been seen with a human. Daniel remained unaware of how closely they were being observed, though he began to feel an unease whenever he walked back to the survey camp. His colleagues asked questions about why he wandered alone so often, and he deflected with excuses, but suspicion was already stirring. Kalira felt it too. One night her fire flickered with tension as she approached. "They are searching for me," she warned. "If they find us together, they will not forgive you. They will claim you are corrupted by my flame." Daniel clenched his fists, anger burning in his chest. "I don't care what they say. I won't let them take you." Her eyes softened at his stubbornness, though sorrow lingered there as well. "Humans are brave," she whispered, "but bravery against the council often ends in chains or worse." Daniel thought about his people, about Earth's long history of defying those who tried to crush them. He knew fear, but he also knew that humanity's strength had always been in its refusal to bow. Looking at Kalira, he felt that same fire rising in himself. "Then let them try," he said firmly. "I'd rather stand with you than live safe while you're hunted." Her flames shimmered, reflecting the stars above, and for the first time Daniel felt she believed him fully. That belief settled between them like a vow. Yet in the distance, unseen by them both, a council beacon pulsed in the night sky, transmitting data across the void. Orders were being drafted, agents were preparing, and soon the fragile bond they were building would be tested by the harsh weight of galactic law. Daniel sensed the storm coming, though he did not yet know its size. The shadows of the galaxy had noticed, and they were closing in, a forbidden bond. The silence of the canyon broke when the sound of engines rumbled across the night. Daniel knew at once that it was not his survey team returning, because the council used different craft, sleek and sharp like knives against the stars. He and Kalira stood at the edge of the rocks, watching as lights spread through the valley below. Her fire flickered nervously, and Daniel could feel the tension in the air like a storm waiting to fall. He turned to her and whispered that they needed to move, but she shook her head and said there was no hiding from the council, once they had fixed their eyes upon someone. The ships landed and figures stepped out, tall armored guards carrying energy rifles, their faces hidden behind silver visors. At their center walked a council adjudicator, a figure in dark robes who carried no weapon because the authority of the council was power enough. Daniel had never seen one this close before, and a chill spread through him as the adjudicator's voice echoed across the stone walls. "Kalira of the Volari, you are summoned by order of the council. You will submit yourself into custody at once." Kalira's fire flared in fear and anger, but she stood her ground. Daniel's heart pounded as he looked from her to the guards and then back to the adjudicator. He wanted to shield her, but he knew these men had the law and the weapons on their side. The adjudicator continued speaking, his tone as cold as the void. "You were seen consorting with a human. This is a violation of council law. The Volari are not permitted bonds nor any intimacy with other species. You risk destabilizing entire systems with your flame. Step forward now, or both of you will be restrained." Daniel clenched his fists. The word bond hung in the air, heavy with threat. He understood then that they already suspected what was growing between him and Kalira. that fragile connection that neither of them had named, but both felt. He stepped forward before she could answer. She has done nothing wrong. She has harmed no one. You fear her only because you do not understand her. The guard shifted at his boldness, but the adjudicator did not move. His voice was smooth and sharp. Human, you tread on ground beyond your station. This creature is not your equal. She is fire uncontained, and fire must be controlled. Daniel met the cold gaze hidden beneath the hood and replied with defiance. She is not a creature. She has a name. She is Kalyra, and she is more human than any of you who hide behind laws to justify chains. The canyon filled with silence so deep it rang louder than any shout. Kalyra's flames trembled with emotion, and she whispered his name, warning him that this was dangerous, but Daniel only stood taller. The adjudicator raised his hand, and the guards advanced. Energy cuffs glowed in their hands, ready to bind them both. Kalyra's fire burst upward, a brilliant pillar of blue light, and the heat pushed the soldiers back. Her voice rang clear. You will not take me. I am not your weapon. The flames wrapped around her, a shield of living fire, but Daniel saw the fear behind her defiance. Her powers were mighty, but the council had numbers and patience, and if she resisted, they would bring heavier forces. Daniel reached for her hand, though the fire seared his skin. He did not let go. You don't have to face them alone, he said through clenched teeth. The contact steadied her, her flames flickering lower though still strong. In that instant he felt the truth of what she had told him about the bond. The fire did not burn him away. It flowed into him warm and alive, as if their hearts had touched beneath the flames. The adjudicator stepped back, his composure cracking as he realized what had just happened. You dare, he hissed. The bond is forbidden. This union will not be allowed. Kalyra's eyes glowed brighter than the stars. Then you will have to destroy us both, she answered. The guards hesitated because even they feared the wrath of a bonded Valari. Daniel held her hand tighter, ignoring the pain, feeling instead the strength that coursed between them. The bond was fragile yet real, a thread of flame and heart that tied them together. He knew there was no turning back. The council had named their love forbidden, but to him it was the only truth worth fighting for. The adjudicator gave a sharp command, and the soldiers closed in once more. The night filled with fire and the clash of will against law, and Daniel realized their fight had only just begun. Fire and chains. The clash that followed in the canyon burned itself into Daniel's memory. Kalyra's flames rose like a wall as the council guards advanced with weapons ready. Blue fire lit the night sky, reflecting against the crystal cliffs, and for a moment Daniel thought she could hold them all at bay. Her fire whipped outward, forcing the guards back. But then more dropships descended from the clouds, and the weight of the council's power pressed down on them. Daniel shouted her name and tried to pull her toward the rocks to escape, but the adjudicator raised a device and unleashed a wave of shimmering energy that cut through her flames. Kalyra staggered, her fire flickering weakly, and Daniel realized with horror that the council had crafted weapons meant to suppress the Valari. The guards surged forward while Kalyra fought to rise again. Daniel swung wildly at one of them, but his fists were nothing against armor, and he was thrown to the ground. He scrambled up, grabbed a rock, and hurled it at another, but was struck by a blast that sent him sprawling. Kalyra tried to reach him, fire sparking again, but the adjudicator's device pulsed once more, and her flames collapsed into sparks. Shackles of energy clamped around her wrists and ankles, glowing with cruel precision, and her body was dragged down to her knees. Daniel crawled toward her, but a soldier kicked him back. He tasted blood in his mouth, and rage burned hotter than the pain. He watched as Kalyra struggled against the chains, her eyes locked on him with desperate sorrow. The adjudicator stepped close to her, his voice calm and cold as ever. The bond has already begun. That makes you both a danger to the order of the galaxy. She will be taken into custody for study and containment. You will be escorted back to your species where your memory may be adjusted. Daniel spat blood on the ground and forced himself up. You think you can erase this? You think you can erase her? You're wrong. The adjudicator looked at him as though he were an insect. You are a human surveyor. You are nothing. Daniel saw Kalyra bow her head as the shackles pulsed, drawing more of her strength away. He could not bear it. He lunged again at the soldiers, but they struck him down and bound his arms. Kalyra cried out his name, her voice filled with anguish, and the flames around her body flared violently before the shackles dimmed them once more. Daniel felt helpless, yet in that moment he also felt a vow rise inside him. He would not let this be the end. They dragged her onto a transport while he was thrown into another craft under heavy guard. Through the window of his shuttle, he saw her glowing form being forced into a containment chamber, her fire dim but still alive. Their eyes met for a final moment before the doors closed and the ships lifted into the sky. The journey that followed was a blur of restraints and silence. Daniel's mind raced with plans, though each one seemed impossible. He thought of the history of his people, of humans who had broken chains, who had fought empires, who had dared the impossible because love or freedom demanded it. He felt the echo of Kalira's fire inside him, faint but real, a warmth that had not vanished even though distance now stretched between them. He realized that the bond was more than just emotion. It was a living thread that tied them across space. When the ships landed, he was separated from the council soldiers and interrogated. They asked him when he had first met her, how strong the bond was, what he had felt when he touched her flame. He refused to give them anything, answering only with silence or scorn until they grew weary and locked him in a cell. Alone in the darkness, Daniel closed his eyes and focused on the warmth inside him. He could almost hear her voice, faint and broken, yet still calling to him. Kalira was in chains, treated like a weapon, her fire suppressed, and he knew the council would not stop until they had twisted her into something she was not. But Daniel also knew this was not over. His bond with her gave him strength, gave him a purpose sharper than fear. Somewhere in the depths of the council's fortress, Kalira was fighting to hold on to herself, and he would find a way to reach her. No matter the odds, no matter the cost, he would break her chains and bring her back to freedom. The heart's choice. The cell was cold and unlit, but Daniel refused to surrender to despair. He sat with his back against the wall, listening to the hum of distant engines and the faint rhythm of boots echoing through metal corridors. His wrists bore bruises from the restraints, yet his spirit burned hotter than the pain. He closed his eyes and searched within himself for the bond that still linked him to Kalira. At first there was only silence, but then faintly he felt the warmth like a heartbeat, not his own pulsing inside his chest. She was alive and she was reaching for him even in chains. That small truth gave him strength. Hours passed, though he could not measure time in the darkness. When the guards returned to drag him for more questioning, he let them believe he was broken. He stumbled and kept his eyes down as though beaten into submission. They laughed at the weakness of a human, but Daniel's mind was alive with calculation. He noted every turn of the corridor, every panel of reinforced steel, every camera mounted above. He waited for his chance, and when they shoved him into another room with bright lights and interrogation chairs, he saw it. The guard closest to him had a stun baton loosely hanging from his belt. Daniel feigned collapse. When the guard bent to grab him, he struck like a cornered animal. He ripped the baton free and slammed it against the man's armor, sparks bursting across the surface. The guard fell with a cry. Daniel whirled on the second soldier, swinging hard, and before the man could raise his weapon, Daniel drove the baton into his side. The alien convulsed and dropped. Breathing hard, Daniel seized a keycard from the floor and ran. Sirens erupted instantly, the fortress alive with alarms. But Daniel was already moving through the corridors like a man with nothing to lose. He followed the bond more than his memory, letting the warmth inside him guide his path. Every time he doubted which way to turn, he focused on Kalira and felt the faint pull in his chest leading him closer. Guards swarmed, but he fought with desperation, using the baton, stolen rifles, and sheer human stubbornness. He was struck more than once, burns searing his side, but he pushed onward. Nothing mattered except reaching her. At last he burst into a chamber unlike any other. It glowed with containment fields, a prison built not with bars but with streams of energy that hummed like caged thunder. In the center stood Kalira, bound by chains of light, her body trembling, her flames reduced to sparks that flickered weakly against her skin. Her eyes lifted as he entered, and in that moment, Daniel felt the bond flare with renewed power. She whispered his name, though her voice was barely audible. He rushed to her, but the adjudicator stepped from the shadows, his hood low, his voice sharp with fury. "You dare to defy the council? You would break into our stronghold for her. You will die here, and she will be studied until nothing remains of her soul." Daniel raised the rifle he had stolen, but his hands shook with rage. "I do not care what you threaten. I came for her, and I will not leave without her." The adjudicator lifted his suppression device, and Kalira screamed as her flames collapsed further. Daniel felt the agony through the bond as if fire and ice tore through his veins. His vision blurred, but his determination only grew. He hurled the rifle aside and ran straight at the adjudicator. They collided, the device clattering across the floor. Daniel punched wildly, fueled by desperation, until the robed figure fell back. With trembling hands, Daniel seized the device and smashed it against the wall until it shattered in sparks. The chains binding Kalira dissolved. Her flames roared to life with a force that shook the chamber. She staggered, but Daniel caught her, ignoring the searing heat. Their bond ignited fully, not fragile now, but blazing like a star. Her fire did not consume him. It wrapped around him, embraced him, made him part of it. For the first time in her life, she was in control. Not because she suppressed her flame, but because Daniel's love steadied it. The adjudicator tried to rise, but Kalira lifted her hand, and her blue fire surged outward, knocking him across the chamber. Soldiers poured in, but the flames expanded like wings of light, shielding Daniel and Kalira both. She stood taller now, radiant and fierce, her fire steady as her eyes glowed with resolve. "I choose him," she declared, her voice ringing across the fortress. "I choose love, not chains." The bond pulsed between them, and Daniel felt it too. He knew that whatever came next, they were bound together beyond fear, beyond law, beyond death. The council could not unmake what they had become. Hand in hand, they stepped forward through the storm of flames, ready to face the galaxy as one. Love that burns forever. The fortress shook as alarms wailed and flames consumed the air. Daniel held Kalira's hand tightly as they moved through the corridors, her fire blazing a path that no soldier dared block. Those who tried to raise weapons were swallowed by waves of blue light that disarmed without killing, for Kalira did not wish to become what the council accused her people of being. She wished to be free, and Daniel's presence made her strength something controlled rather than destructive. Together they moved like one, every step echoing with the bond that now linked them. Outside, the night sky boiled with ships descending, sleek hunters of the council drawn to crush what they saw as rebellion. Kalira raised her hand and her fire shot upward, forming a barrier of flame that split the heavens. Daniel stared in awe as her fire bent the paths of energy blasts, the ships forced to retreat in confusion. Her control was no longer wild but precise, every flicker a testament to the harmony they had found. She turned to him and her eyes glowed with determination. "We cannot stay here. The galaxy will come for us." Daniel nodded, though fear pressed against him. "Then we go together. Whatever comes, we face it." They fled into the wilderness beyond the fortress, traveling through crystal valleys and shadowed plains. The council did not stop their pursuit, but the bond between human and Volari grew stronger with each step. Kalira's flames no longer threatened to consume her. Instead, they pulsed gently around them, lighting their way through darkness. Daniel found himself laughing at times, even in danger, because her presence filled him with a joy he had never known. Kalira, too, began to smile more often, her laughter soft like fire crackling on a hearth. What had begun with a foolish joke had become the foundation of a love powerful enough to challenge empires. When they reached the edges of Lysera, a hidden camp of Volari awaited them. Kalira's people gathered with wary eyes, fearful of what the council would do to any who sheltered her. Yet when they saw her fire burning steady rather than raging, when they saw the human who stood unflinching beside her, whispers spread among them. They had believed the bond to be myth or danger, something to fear, but here before them was proof that it could bring peace rather than ruin. Kalira raised her voice so all could hear. "I am not a weapon. I am not a tool of the council. I am Volari, and I have found balance not through suppression but through trust. This human did not fear my fire. He embraced it, and because of that I stand before you free." Her people began to lift their heads with hope, the flames of their bodies flickering more brightly. Some wept openly for the first time in years. Daniel stood at her side and felt pride swell within him. Humanity had always been underestimated, but here his stubbornness and humor had helped change more than one life. It had changed an entire people's vision of themselves. The council's ships eventually arrived above the camp, preparing to strike, but what they saw forced them to hesitate. Dozens of Volari stood with Kalira, their flames no longer unstable but glowing with steadiness as if her bond had awakened something within them all. Daniel stepped forward, shouting toward the sky with defiance. "You cannot chain what you do not understand. You cannot kill love. If you try, you will face not weapons but hearts that burn brighter than any fire you fear." The standoff stretched long into the night, but the council, wary of provoking a rebellion among the Volari, finally withdrew. The galaxy had shifted that day. The Council's control weakened, their fear exposed, and across the stars whispers grew that a human and a woman of fire had defied them together. In the days that followed, Daniel and Kalira remained at the camp, helping her people learn to embrace their emotions rather than suppress them. The bond they shared became a symbol not only of defiance but of hope. For Daniel it was simple. He loved her, not as a being of flame but as Kalira, who had shown him strength and vulnerability in equal measure. For Kalira it was revelation, that love could tame fire without chains, that trust could quiet the storm within her. One evening as the twin suns set again, Daniel stood with her on the edge of the canyon where they had first met. The memory of his awkward words hung between them and he laughed softly. "Nice tale," he repeated, and Kalira laughed too, her flames dancing joyfully. She leaned close, her fire wrapping around him in warmth that no longer hurt. "Foolish human," she said. "You changed everything with those words." Daniel smiled and kissed her, the stars above reflecting in her fire. For the first time in countless years, Kalira felt whole, not cursed, not feared, but loved. And Daniel knew that whatever battles remained, they would face them together. Their love was no longer forbidden. It was eternal. It burned across the galaxy as a story that no law could erase. It was the fire that would never fade. Love that burns forever. The Maikanda Council Fortress lay in ruins behind them. As Daniel and Kalira walked into the wilderness, their hands still bound together by the invisible thread of the bond that neither chains nor law could sever. The night sky was alive with stars, and the reflection of her fire painted the land in soft blue light. They did not speak at first, for words felt too small for the weight of what they had survived. Daniel felt her warmth pulsing through him steady and strong, and he knew that nothing could break them now. Soon they reached the hidden settlement of the Volari, where her people gathered in wary silence. They looked upon her with eyes that had only known fear for so long, yet now they saw something different. Kalira's flames no longer flared out of control. They flowed gently around her body, calm and radiant like a river of light. Beside her stood a human whose skin was scarred and whose eyes held no fear of their fire. Whispers passed through the crowd as Kalira lifted her voice so all could hear. "My people, we have lived in chains not only forged by the council, but by the fear within our own hearts. We believed our fire was curse and danger, yet here I stand free and whole. I have bonded not with fear but with trust. This human did not run when my flames rose. He did not see me as weapon. He saw me as Kalira, and because of that I am no longer broken." Her words rippled through the camp, and Daniel felt the power of her voice even more than the heat of her fire. The Volari began to straighten their backs and lift their heads, their flames glowing brighter, as hope spread like kindling catching light. For the first time they saw one of their own stand unshackled, not because the fire was suppressed, but because it was embraced. Above them the council ships descended once more, dark wings across the stars. But when they saw not one Volari but many standing, with fire steady, they hesitated. Kalira stepped forward and Daniel with her. Her flames rose higher but no longer wild. They formed a shield that stretched across the settlement. Daniel shouted into the sky with all the strength in his chest. "You cannot destroy what you fear to understand. Love is not your weapon to break. We are bound and we are free." The council did not fire. They hovered in silence before slowly retreating into the dark. That night the galaxy shifted. Whispers of rebellion spread across systems. The Volari found courage in Kalira and Daniel's defiance, and humans gained a new legend as a people whose hearts were unyielding, even against empires. In the days that followed, Daniel and Kalira taught others what they had learned together. They showed that fire could be guided by trust, not chains. They showed that laughter and kindness could calm storms where fear only fed them. Each evening when the twin suns set, Daniel would stand beside her on the canyon edge and remember the moment it all began. He would laugh softly and say the same clumsy words that had changed his life. "Nice tale." Kalira would laugh too, her fire dancing joyfully as she pressed close to him. "Foolish human," she would say, "you set my heart ablaze." Under the endless stars, their fire burned together not as curse or weapon, but as love that would outlast fear and echo across the galaxy forever. The end.